Hi, I'm Niki, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to this episode of Reading to be Read for November 2024. I have a lot of books. It has been a really fun month in reading. A couple of duds, not gonna lie. But for the most part, I'm picking up books that are very high priority and I'm not being disappointed. Mostly from authors that I have read before and know I like. Read for a recent Read Burn Hoard, I picked up Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a hodgepodge of Chinese and English history. It's obviously a work of fiction, but there's a lot of actual historical stuff that makes an appearance here. It takes place at Oxford, and the linguistics department is this really cool tower that they call Babel. I'd heard this described as dark academia, and that's my initial draw to it because I thought, okay, cool. I had a couple of issues with the Poppy War series. I loved the first book, the second two issues. But I figured I'd give the author another chance, especially considering this one is a standalone. The first half, it was about a 4-star read, and I kept thinking, depending on where it's going, it could be a solid 5 stars for me. I was really enamored with the whole thing. I thought it was so cool. Really great character, really great setup. The school setting aspect was obviously really cool, but really didn't spend as much time with the school or the magic as I wish we had. And then around the halfway point, a catalyst, something happened, and suddenly I am reading a completely different book. Totally different, and my enjoyment level was a 1 or 2 stars. If I hadn't been reading it with friends or for a project, I might have DNF'd the book. First of all of the characters complete 180'd on themselves. They acted nothing like I thought they should based on the profile we'd been given up to that point. Second of all, okay, so social commentary in books is fine, whatever. I just don't like to be hit over the head with it. The thing is, this one, it's not even that the social commentary was a component that reared its head constantly. It's that the book became about the social commentary. That's all you're reading about in the second half is this like stance. And I signed up for the magic and the academics and I like the characters from the beginning, but it turned into something completely different. So started with a 4-star, ended with a 1 or 2 star. I don't know, 2.5 stars. Maybe even a 2. I think I'm gonna round down because I'm just totally dissatisfied. So unfortunately, I think this author and I may need to part ways. There are things I really love, but this is the second time where I have not gotten a series payoff where I felt like there was inconsistency of characters, and I'm just not enjoying the works. I come away from it feeling like I just wasted my time. So unfortunately, even though this book is beloved by a lot of people, I am not one of them. Also for Read Burn Hoard, I picked up Great Changes and Other Lies by Joe Abercrombie. This is a Subterranean Press hardcover. This is a short story collection to be read after the Age of Madness trilogy, which is his most recent publications in the First Law world. The First Law world, don't even get me started. I love it so much. I geek out about it more than any other author, even though they're technically not my top favorites, right? Realm of the Elderlings or maybe even Anthony Ryan might take those spots. However, I love it so hard, and so this, being able to pick up a short story collection to kind of get me back into the world, remind me why I'm so excited for more to come in this world. And he's got a book called The Devils, which is coming out next year sometime. I may or may not hound for an arc. The point being, he took a break from all of this to focus on that, and I am so there. I cannot wait. It's probably my most anticipated release of next year. And so this one, 4 out of 5 stars, simply because it's very difficult to get into short stories, but he did a lot of really clever things here. So if you read The Heroes, and you know that one battle scene that was so cool where the POVs kind of bounced off of each other, he plays with that a lot in this little collection, and it's very much worth reading. I enjoyed it thoroughly. 4 stars! I've also been continuing my read of the Animorph series. I read 20 through 23, and 20, 21, and 22 are kind of a trilogy, so the story doesn't really resolve until the end of this third book in this set. It's kind of like capping off the original set of Animorphs for me, and then from there I feel like it takes a very different direction. But I'm really excited because I've read the first 22 books so many times. I used to read 3 every summer day when I was a kid, at least. I had so much fun with these growing up. From about 23 on, I've only read them once, and so I feel like I'm reading it for the first time, and even this one, I didn't remember anything about it, and I enjoyed it. So, very excited to continue my trek with these. Those are definitely the books that got me into reading as a kid. Okay, now we get into an organization problem. So I have a ton of books that get picked for random draw or for projects that you have not yet seen on the channel. Trouble is the one I'm running right now is an incomplete series challenge. And unlike the sci-fi one I ran a couple months ago, where I was only reading 1 or 2 books as a surprise, like, oh, what is she gonna pick? Almost every single book that I'm reading right now is to be revealed in a future video. So, like, this would be all I have to talk about, but I have read like 4 or 5 more books. So for the sake of keeping my sanity, and instead of trying to get more organized and figure out when something aired and tried to talk about a book like 3 months later than when I actually read it, I'm going to talk about all the books right now that will eventually show up as a random draw on a future video. So if you are one of those people who loves the random draw component and don't want to be spoiled on what I'm reading or what I'm picking for that, skip ahead to the currently reading section. That was a lot. First up, for Incomplete Series Challenge, I read Winter Lost. This one was such a delight to have been chosen because I am normally not behind on Patricia Briggs books, specifically with Mercy Thompson and Alpha and Omega. Normally, I pick these up as ARCs and have them done months before they actually come out because I like them that much. It's worth the time for me to invest in the physical read of it when the audio component has not arrived yet. And actually, this is the very first one I've read in audio in the series, and it wasn't bad. I didn't mind it. Now, this is probably the weakest one I've read in a while. The storylines usually progress an enigma character forward with each book, and you dig a little deeper into someone and it gets really interesting and you're like, oh, I've been wanting to know about them. And she has so many that each book is a surprise. This one really didn't dig into anybody's backstory. It was truly like a tangent story. And I left it feeling like, I could have taken or leave in this one, but it's one of those series for me that any time spent with the character is great. So I'm not mad about it at all. Don't get me wrong. But it's not my favorite of the series. The last one, Soul Taken, whoa, so good. So good. So hopefully the next one will be better, but I am also excited that she's at least still writing in this world. 3 stars. I picked up Dregs of Empire by Christopher Rocchio. It's book like 5.5, 5.6 in the Sun Eater series. My library had an audio edition of this, which is why I picked it up. I had read the first 2 tales of the Sun Eater, and they weren't really good enough for me. They didn't really add enough for me to want to continue reading the tales in tandem with the series. I figure if I tried to do that, I would never get through it. But this one was available in audio, so I picked it up, and it was okay. Like, I'm probably a 3-starring this one as well. I like the character. It's nice to dig a little more into the internal monologues, what's really motivating him. I liked all of those aspects. The story itself, he keeps kind of one-upping himself when it comes to the horror factor of the violence. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, what are you gonna do next? Like, something incredibly taboo just for shock value? So I don't like that he's trying to play off of the shock value aspect to evoke emotion. I feel like it's a cheap out. I feel like if you focus more on creating really meaningful moments, you don't need that. And actually, that's why I like the series to begin with. I felt like he had a lot of really good, profound moments. Very melodramatic, you know, really gets you, like, feeling for the characters or whatever. But these later books, to me, just it feels kind of like a cop-out. Because it worked a couple of times early on, and so many people are, like, raving about those scenes that are so impactful. But it's like Adele singing. Like, she doesn't do all that fancy, like, singing nuance work with every single note. Like, she throws it in for impact, like, maybe once in a while, and it's just like, wow! Whereas I feel like he's just, like, throwing it all out there. It'll be interesting to see what's in book 6, because it's the only one that is out that I have not read yet. Still love the series overall, just needed to get that rant out of the way. I picked up the 5th and final book in the original Fablehaven sequence. Unlike the other books in the series, kind of like an Animorph situation. When a new one comes out, I went and, like, reread everything up till the new one. And then when the new one comes out, you read everything up to the new one. So you've reread the first several so many times. In any case, this felt like a completely new book to me because I had only read it once. I had forgotten a lot of things. and it was a total delight. I felt like a kid again, and I was like stealing time to come read the book. It was a very tangible experience because there's illustrations throughout, so, you know, keep reading till you get to the next illustration. Loved it. Perhaps not quite as strong as the earlier books in the series, 1 through 4. I think this is my least favorite, but on a caliber of one of my all-time favorite series, it's still a 4-star. Series challenge, I read Late Eclipses. It's book 4 in the October Day series. This author and I have been hit or miss. With this series, October Day, it's been just kind of meh. And if anything, it's like dipped below meh. I hated book 2, but 3 was good. Okay, you know. 4 was probably the strongest one I've read yet, but I'm still on the fence. I'm not loving it yet. Urban fantasies do typically take a long time to get going, but the thing she has working for her is that I absolutely love Wayward Children. I love it. I think it's so creative, and I love this author's approach to storytelling. She's got so many cool, unique things that if you all know, if you read paranormal romance or urban fantasy, they all start to sound the same after a while. These do not sound the same. They stand out on their own as very unique, and I love that about them. But something about the writing in these early October days struck me as a bit immature, and I'm having a hard time connecting to the characters because they feel really one note. However, she has dazzled me in Wayward Children with the most profound connections that I've felt in reading over the last couple of years. So I'm willing to keep going with this. It helps matters also that I own almost the entire series in audio. Picked it up on one of those Black Friday $2 a pop sales, and yeah, they're flooding my library right now. As long as they continue to get slightly better and better, I think I'm in it for the whole series. But as it stands, this one was like 2.5 stars. Wah, wah. I also picked up Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Hadn't read anything else by the author so far, but she is responsible for Eat, Pray, Love, which I think most people have heard of. I now want to read that book after having read this one. I recommend this highly for anybody who considers themselves a creator or anybody who wants to become a creator. She has so many nuggets of wisdom in there that were so awesome. And I got so much out of this book. Definitely a nonfiction I think I might revisit at some point. The writing was superb, but the different aspects of creation that she talked about, from even getting started all the way to the point where you've had some little bit of success, like what to do with it when you have it, how to keep that relationship between yourself and creativity a strong one, something that fills you up with joy. I loved it. I think the ideas that I got out of it are potentially life-changing, so I give that sentiment a 5-star. I think the book itself, yeah, 4 or 5 stars. Really good. And now we move on to the currently reading section, and I have a couple of tomes. Still reading Rhythm of War. I am, I don't know, 80% of the way through this thing. It has been a really good reread. However, I seem to not remember anything that happened in Oathbringer, because every single event that's happening here, I actually thought happened in that book. So the pacing on this one, I can see why it gets a lot of flack, because I do think there is way too long between when we leave one set of characters and when we get back to them. And the part in the middle could drag if you weren't interested in every nuance of what they're talking about. Luckily for me, I'm eating up the entire thing. I love it so much. But I can see objectively, or subjectively, I'm not sure what the thing, that this is probably the weakest book of the series so far. But hopefully it's a lot of setup. There's a lot of new information in here, some novelty aspects. And I love the sense of discovery that it brings. I also love that it's over 1,000 pages, and I do not feel the burden of having read over 1,000 pages. It's one of those series that just flows. I love it so much. So, this is in anticipation of Winds and Truth, just to acclimate myself in the world, and I think it was necessary for me. And then Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, 4th and final book in the Dandelion Dynasty series. Started this with my patrons a week ago, and then quickly realized that Rhythm of War, Speaking Bones, both narrated by Michael Kramer, both epic fantasies, both really culminating these like complicated events. I just didn't have the bandwidth to put one down and focus on the other. I felt like I'm gonna be inundated. Not confused. You can't really confuse the storylines because they're so different from one another, but I really want to have a moment with that one, and I want to have a moment with this one, and I can't do that at the same time. The first 4 chapters are great, but I'm hoping to really dive into this as soon as I finish Rhythm. Let's talk about my to be read. Funny thing about to be read piles, I feel like I carry the same books month after month in my TBR until they actually get read, but at least they are actually getting read. A lot of times lately, the ones that I'm talking about, nothing gets dropped off. With a lot of the books that I talk about, I just don't have the time to get to them, but they do actually all get read eventually if I put them on my intentionality TBR list. In any case, one that's definite, Somewhere Beyond the Sea. This is a placeholder. I've ordered a copy, but it has not arrived yet. By T.J. Klune. It's part of the Cerulean series. House on the Cerulean Sea was awesome. It took me about halfway through the book before I was convinced that I was going to really like it, and ended up loving the whole thing. Like, it did a really good job. No idea what to expect in the next one. I'm going to have to read a summary, but my patrons and I are reading this near the end of the month, and I can't wait. Also up, this is a no-brainer, Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. My number one anticipated book of the decade. I love it that much. That might be a little lofty. If Robin Hobb comes out with something else, that will take precedent, but you get the point. I'm very excited for this one. They're like 1,000-page book series in the Stormlight Archive, and I've reread them so many times. I'm the person who has so many series going, and I'm so stressed out that I don't have time to get to everything. And I'm yet rereading 1,000-page books just for the pure pleasure of it, and I don't feel any stress while I'm doing it. That's how you know you've got a winner. I love it so much. And this caps off the initial first arc of the series. My patron Sonia and I are buddy reading it when it comes out, and I will see you in January because it's basically going to take up all of my December. Yet again on my list because we needed to bump back the scheduling for this one, A Practical Guide to Conquering the World by K.J. Parker. I've talked about this series until I'm blue in the face, but this is the final book in the trilogy, and I'm really excited for it. Monstrous Nights. This is an edition kindly sent to me by the publicists at Tor. This is the second and final book to the Witch's Compendium of Monsters duology. Loved the snot out of the first one. Got a digital arc and a physical arc of the second one, and read several chapters into it and then got sidetracked and haven't made it back, even though I'm really excited. It's one of those I set aside because I know I'm going to love it. Like, you save the best for later. I shouldn't do that. Like, just burn the candle. Read the book. But in any case, now I'm waiting for an audiobook copy to come in from the library because it's out now. And I can't wait. The first 5 chapters, just as good as the first book. I know I'm going to like it. And last but not least, continuing with a little bit more nonfiction, I picked up Attention Span by Gloria Mark. She's a PhD and I guess one of the leading researchers in the attention economy, and referenced by Cal Newport, who wrote Digital Minimalism and Slow Productivity as one of the main gurus that he researched when trying to compose his works. So evidently she's like the end all when it comes to learning about your distractibility, and I'm all there for that. I always get so inspired with like life-changing things whenever I read Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. So very excited for this one. In fact, there was a time when I was reading everything that I could on the subject, and I don't know how this one didn't pull up in my research as a reference, like a good one to check out. So I feel like I found a hidden gem. I always forget my little Audible tracker update. Probably this month because not much of interest has happened. I finished Fablehaven 5, so that was an audiobook, and then I also finished Late Eclipses. So if you look at my 3-for-1 challenge, I have completed 3 total. So for every 3 that I read, I get to purchase 1. But since the challenge started, I've purchased 6 books. So I'm in the hole by 3. It was only in the hole by 2 before this last update, but I bought Speaking Bones so that I could join the buddy read, and I started it immediately. That's not the kind of purchasing that I'm mad about, but I still have yet to start The Starter Villain by John Scalzi. I bought it on a really good deal because my patrons and I were planning on reading it, but it's one of those that we'd like to get around to, but hasn't seemed to be higher priority than other things we have scheduled. And then I bought Road of Storms by Anthony Ryan, and the thought process there was that I'm going to be binging that series sometime soon. They're little novellas, so I figured may as well have it. But what I should have done was wait until I was actually ready to start binging it before I purchased it. Lesson learned. I have listened to 10 books towards the Audible completion challenge and have purchased 6. At least we're moving forward. And that's everything. We got a full house here. I'm so excited about all the books that I've read and I've got going on. My incomplete series challenge is still going incredibly well. I have not started a new series and I have continued to knock things off the list. However, at the same rate at which I am knocking things off the list, I am discovering books on my shelves or on my lists of series that I started that I forgot about. So I'm not moving at all on that list. For everything I finish, I find a new one I forgot about, and so it just makes the list higher. It's not very motivating, but I sure am having fun with the series that I've decided to focus on. So that's all from me. Let me know what's your favorite book you've read over the last month or so. I appreciate all of you who watched to the end. So grateful. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.